Okay, welcome folks. I'm going to go ahead and kick off the session. Thank you everyone for coming to this morning's session, and thank you to our panel here. My name is Jill Hawthorne. I'm class of 87, and I am the Associate Director of Constituent Engagement and Campus Partnerships. I am here as part of the Alumni and Family Engagement team. This virtual family orientation is brought to you by our office, but only made possible by our fabulous Pitzer and Claremont speakers. Today, we start off with our panel of professors to learn more about advising the Pitzer academic experience in the first year seminar. As an alumna, more than 30 years later, I still often think about the books we discussed and wrote about in my first year seminar, named The Necessity of Evil with Ellen Ringler Henderson, and how I gained confidence in my writing, and it helped me be more comfortable and confident and from that point going forward. So it's always been special to me, and I hope it is for your students. We are fortunate to have three professors here to speak with you. Let's welcome Sarah Gilman, first year seminar director and associate professor of biology, Ming-Yuen S. Ma, professor of media studies, and Darren Brown, assistant professor of psychology. So with that, please take it away.
Thank you, Jill. I guess I will go first. Since one of the hats I wear, I'm a biology professor, as Jill mentioned, and one of the other hats I wear is that I run the first year seminar program, which means I am the one who is responsible for assigning your child to their first year seminar course and their first academic advisor at Pitzer. Please don't send me any complaints. I have a couple slides that I'm going to share that are slides that I actually shared with students during academic orientation, but I wanted to just give you guys a brief overview. See if I can get these set up and talk at the same time of the first year seminar program and of academic advising in the first year. And then I'm going to turn it over to my two colleagues, Ming and Darin, to talk a little bit about their experiences. They both taught in the FYS program and served as academic advisors. And then I think our plan is really just to open it up to your questions if you have any. Briefly, the first year seminar course, this is an interdisciplinary seminar course. It's a small course. All the classes are 14 to 16 students this year. It is writing intensive, so it meets the Pitzer College's writing requirement. Everybody has to take a writing course before they graduate. And it's also meant to sort of acclimate or acclimatize students to academic life. So in addition to reading and writing, faculty work with students to basically to get them comfortable in the classroom in a sort of a discussion-based small seminar format. Usually there are extracurricular activities, so classes will be going, as a class or in small groups to lectures or art openings on campus or field trips even off campus. So it's really a way to sort of help your students adjust to college life, to give them a close relationship with the FYS instructor who will be their academic advisor, usually until they declare their major. It's up to the student how long they want to stay with that academic advisor. The advisor piece was something we actually only added about 7 or 8 years ago, and I found it's really improved my advising relationships with first year students because I see them twice a week in the classroom every week. So I get a much better sense of what's going on in their lives and what they're struggling with in that first semester when I see them so frequently. A lot of students, I'm going to skip over a couple of slides that I use for when I do this presentation with students. But a lot of students and parents actually struggle a little bit with what an academic advisor is, what we actually do, and how that differs from maybe the counselor that your student had or your child had in high school. So academic advisors are really advisors. We give advice. We're not going to tell your students what courses to take. We're going to ask them what they're interested in and help them maybe figure out what courses would let them explore those interests, but ultimately it's up to them. So we help with the basics, things like finding courses. We help connect them to resources. So if they're thinking about study abroad, that's like one of the first questions I asked all my students this week when I was doing advising this week. Are you interested in study abroad? Let's start planning that so you can go abroad as a sophomore or junior. We're a resource when students are struggling in a class. We can help connect them to support services such as tutoring, and just we're someone to sort of bounce ideas off of, and help them to think about or help them to adjust to life in college, where they often have a lot more independence and flexibility than they did in high school. And sometimes that can be actually, that freedom can be a little overwhelming. Okay, so the metaphor that I used with students when I did this, these slides to the incoming first year class, is that I think of Pitzer, of your Pitzer college career as a car race, right? So the goal is to get all the way around that track and graduate in 4 years with your degree. The student is the one in the driver's seat. The advisor is part of the pit crew, right? So the student is steering and deciding where to go, whether are they going to do study abroad, are they going to major in math, or are they going to major in literature? The advisor is just there to make sure that they don't run out of fuel and the tires have air pressure. The other thing I would add is that the advisor is just one piece of this pit crew. And you notice that I put in here, parents are down here. So family and friends are part of the pit crew. They're part of the support network that students need to get through these 4 years of college. But you guys as the parents aren't in the driver's seat any more than I as the advisor am, right? It's the student who's got to make these decisions. And what I found, and what a lot of us found, is that the more the students reach out and build up a pit crew, so interact with other offices and departments and students and programs, the better and more rich that their Pitzer experience is going to be, and the more support that they'll have when they hit a bump in the road, because there are going to be bumps, particularly in the first year. There's going to be adjustments, and that's normal, but you want to make sure that your child has the resources to get over those bumps. I think that's really all I was going to say. Yes, that's the end of my slideshow. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen first of all, and then turn it over to, I don't know, Ming or Darren, which of you wants to go next?
Let's do alphabetical order. So Darren, you're.
All right, that works. Hi, everyone. My name is Darren Brown. I'm an assistant professor of psychology at Pitzer, and I'm relatively new to the Pitzer family. I started in 2019, and I'm part of the psychology field group. We have field groups, not departments, and I get that right now. And my interests are mainly in cognitive neuroscience and computational neuroscience. So that's sort of where my interests lie. But because of the sort of the groundwork of Pitzer College, it allows me sort of to expand my interests and talk to a whole bunch of different people. And this sort of bleeds into my my first year seminar that I was able to teach. I taught a course that had very little to do with psychology and had a lot to do with something I know nothing about, social media and how we engage with it. And it was great because all of my training in my graduate training, even as an undergrad, anything I did were in large universities. And when I came to Pitzer and learned, okay, your classes are small and you get to engage with students in a way that you probably never engaged with students, I was a little nervous at first because I've never had to engage with faculty in the way that I get to engage with faculty or my students here. But the finishing up my second year, it's been very rewarding. And I can see the importance of having this, I guess in my case it would be 13-on-1, but almost one-on-one interactions with my students, where I not only learn, like, okay, as Sarah said, sort of piggybacking on that, oh yeah, take this class, take this class. Instead, I get to go, oh, last summer we talked about this. How are you feeling about this? And I actually remember. I feel like I have a collaboration with my first year students, which is nice because when I was a first year student, I felt sort of in the dark and I didn't know who to rely on. It was a little challenging, obviously, for everyone over this last year being online. And I taught my first year seminar during this campus closure and everything. And yes, it is true that reading and writing are kind of the main aims of these courses, but community engagement and community building are kind of the underlying important piece also. And I really turned into that. And I found that really important, especially at this time when a lot of our students who will be starting this in the next couple of weeks as second years, they had yet to step foot on the campus, really. And so getting them to know their classmates, getting them to know people in other FYS courses and other resources around campus was one of my main aims. And I think that there is, just speaking from a faculty perspective, this level of anxiety that goes into the FYS, like, oh, like I want to give them a great experience and I want them to walk away with these certain goals, but I also want them to start, you know, bleeding orange. We want them to start looking at Pitzer as a extension of their family. And it was very stressful to step into that room or into that space. But in the end, I found myself as, like I said, a collaborator, a colleague, as well as a professor and advisor to these students. It's incredibly rewarding. And looking back on my own education, I'm like, oh man, I kind of wish I had a similar experience. So I guess that's kind of all I got. I'll just wait for questions later, I guess. So Ming can take it away.
Okay, thank you. Welcome everyone. So let's see. I think I'm entering my 20th year at Pitzer. So I've been here a while. And so I've actually experienced a number of different formats for the first year seminar and sort of advising structure. So I guess I'll talk a little bit about that and sort of, I actually taught with Darin last year, first year seminar. So that's the latest one, but I've done it several times. But before I talk about that, I think I'll go back a little bit, talk about, I'm in media studies, which is a intercollegiate major. So we have, there are media studies programs and faculty in all of the 5 undergraduate colleges here in Claremont. And our students take courses across all the colleges, which is usually the case anyways for most fields. But I think for us, we are also one of the first groups, departments, outside of Pitzer, you can say departments, departments that has the same major. So if you major in media studies at Pomona College and you major in media studies at Pitzer, it's the same major. And I believe we may be one of the larger undergraduate majors across the colleges, although I don't have the numbers right in front of me. Another thing that's quite interesting about our program is that we are a theory practice integrated program. So our students, they learn how to produce media, so they actually make media. A sort of a range from digital video to web-based to even some social media projects. But they also learn about media theories and histories. So the idea is that the theory, history, criticism informs the practice and vice versa. That's really the sort of, I would say, the spirit or the sort of founding philosophy of our program, which has been the case since I've been here. So we've pretty much been doing it for 20 plus years. And what's interesting is that I would say in the last like 5 to 10 years or so, maybe less than 10, like 5 to 8 years or so, that seems to be the general trajectory of the field as a whole. So you see the more traditional film schools or more traditional programs like at USC or UCLA also developing these kind of programs, theory, practice, integrated programs. But we've been doing it for a long time. So I think we're quite good at it. Either to our own horn. So to talk a little bit about first year seminar, the seminar that I taught last year is called Video and Diversity. I think it's quite reflective of the spirit of the Media Studies program. So the course is organized around, roughly speaking, 3 different histories. The histories of social protest movements from the 1960s onwards, the history of video technology, and the history of how different marginalized groups have utilized and taken advantage of this technology to create self-representation or to challenge or deconstruct dominant media. So we're talking about different civil rights movements. We're talking about, LGBTQ liberation movement, the women's movement, the various kind of decolonization types of efforts. It's US focused, but there is sort of a global, larger sort of global perspective. And all of my syllabi are online, so if you guys are interested, I'm happy to give you the link. I'll type it into the chat later. So I think I want to echo a couple of things both Sarah and Darin had mentioned already. I think one of the things I learned about the first year seminar is to try to not do too much. I think professors often, we want to fill up those 15 or 16 weeks with material that we're going to teach. But because first year seminars are writing intensive courses, one of the big lessons I learned from doing it, I've taught this class several times over the years, is to actually cut down the material that I want to include in the course. The actual reading material about video diversity. So not so much the writing and the working with the students on the writing part. That's actually grown, I would say. And I know this is sort of a debatable subject, and then maybe the 3 or 4 of us can debate a little bit about this. I have at different times, and I still feel that perhaps the first year seminars at Pitzer are trying to do too much. In other words, it's trying to do too much in one class that takes place in one semester. But I do agree with Sarah that I think one of the important things that we do is to sort of start teaching our students how to be a college student. And I do think this is quite significant. And I agree with Sarah that I think this is where perhaps family and friends, like students' existing support systems, can be very helpful. Because I don't believe, I know from my experience that not all of our students come to Pitzer with the knowledge of how to be a college student at a liberal arts college like Pitzer. So for example, sometimes students are intimidated, are reluctant, are, their first reaction would not be, I'm gonna make an appointment to go see my professor during office hours. So one of the things I do is I have those meetings built into my syllabus now. So in effect, students have to meet with me. So I'm hoping that kind of institutes the habit, because that's really important for their success at Pitzer. And I would say at the Claremont colleges, to sort of be proactive, to meet with your professors. That's why we have office hours. So I also I think I sort of echoed some of what Darin had said about the uniqueness of the first year seminar. Even it's different from even like the interlevel types of media studies courses I teach. And I think maybe that's a good place for me to stop. I know there's probably more that I can comment on this, but perhaps this is a good time to open this up and see what the audience that we cannot see is interested in. If you have any questions, that could direct the rest of our conversation. or perhaps maybe to get us started, the three of us might want to comment on, we're sort of already doing it. Maybe we want to comment on each other's.
On each other, yeah. Yeah, I can comment on what Ming said. I liked what you say about taking content out. The way that I explain my FYS to students on the first day of class is that our topic, our subject, is like a thin veneer that goes on top of the writing. And the main goal of the course is to make sure that it's bring everybody up to the same level and make sure that they're all capable of doing college level writing. The course I teach, like the one that Darin teaches, is not really in my area of expertise. The one I'm teaching this year, I've changed the title through the years. It's called Selective Science, but it's looking at how people evaluate and make use of scientific information in their daily lives. And it's suddenly really relevant in the age of COVID and all these debates about things like masks and vaccines and all the kinds of information you can find on the internet about COVID that may or may not be useful. It used to be kind of a more abstract kind of class. And this is the first year I'm teaching it since the pandemic. So I'm kind of a little nervous to see how that part turns out. But it's actually a big chunk of it is it's a little bit of science. It's a mix of science and psychology, how people process information and make decisions, and communication, how information gets to people. So I've learned a lot teaching it. I really like it. It's not something I would normally teach in the course of teaching biology courses, but it's a lot of fun to sort of to see where the students take the ideas that I give them in terms of applying them to their own research papers. I learn a lot that way actually too.
Yeah, and I have kind of piggybacking on what Ming said. When I reflect on my own educational trajectory or past, I think about my senior year in college, stopping in a professor's office to ask about a grade. And we ended up having this really important discussion. And I thought, like, why haven't I been doing this all along? And I realized that there really isn't a class in a lot of universities that actually teach you how to be a college student. And I think that the FYS course really fits that niche. As being described, I make it a very serious point to go speak to your professors. I actually have a assignment for at least the 2 years that I have my advisors, unless they switch out of me earlier. But I tell them, you know, your homework, your ongoing homework is you need to meet 2 people at the college every year. Now they could be staff, they could be faculty, but you need to meet people and have them know you somewhat. And there's a lot of benefits to that. There's letters of recommendation. There's, oh, I know someone who just got a grant, who's looking for an assistant and things like that. But it also levels the playing field. The voices of the students matter at Pitzer. And so letting them know, we want to hear from you, we need to hear from you, is a really important thing. And I think the FYS program really sets the foundation for that engagement between us.
Yeah, I agree. And I think also, because we can't see you, parents and friends, we don't necessarily know who's here. But, I would definitely say, we also have international students who come from school systems that might not encourage or require meeting with, like, professors might not be accessible, right? Or even like, some public high schools, large public high schools. So I think that's, I think, the one thing I want to emphasize is probably that I would say that I think from the parents' family side to really encourage and support your children to be proactive, not rude, right? But, I'm going to use the same word, to be proactive in seeking out and engaging with faculty, because I think that's one of the big benefits, one of the big sort of pluses of going to a liberal arts college. Because I came from a large public university system, the UC system, where, you can teach a class of 300 students, and those students do not get to meet with the professors. mean, maybe they try really hard, but definitely at the Claremont colleges, we're much more accessible. And that's a very big advantage. And I do think that, again, depending on the background of the student themselves, that, some are very comfortable doing it, some might not be. But also, so think about Jill, your previous position at Pitzer as the sort of academic coach, to sort of the Office of Student Affairs also has resources that could help students, if they are intimidated, if they are, neurally diverse, there are many sort of issues that we're dealing with today that prevents them from interacting with a faculty member. I think the student of the Dean of Students Office, the Students Affairs Office, it's also a very good resource for that. Do you want to say something about it? I mean, not to put you on the spot.
Jill?
Oh, sure. I would love to. We have, I am one that is always saying everyone's on the same side, and you weren't expected to know everything in this class, or why would the professor be teaching it? So really just using some of those, smaller arguments to bite away at the nervousness about it. And I know one of the phenomena that happens is folks want to be ready to tell something or go speak. And when you're not quite ready is still probably the best time to actually go. But yes, I agree that doing a little coaching about, that this is why you're here. Look, you are at Pitzer so you can speak with your professors, so really just affirming things that are probably in their minds, but you have to bring it up to the surface a little bit. So I agree completely. And I hope families who hear this and sense that their students could be reaching out more to just affirm those types of messages that they know to be true, and they just need to hear it.
Yeah, I'd agree with what Jill said. I mean, I think I was thinking back to my own college experience. My first science course at Stanford was 400 chemistry students all in one giant lecture hall. Here, our science courses or some of the intro courses are some of the largest at Pitzer, and they're 40 to 45. So it's like completely different. I know even with 40 students, I know all my students' names, usually within a couple of weeks. But what I've noticed, I mean, one of the things that I think we've all said is when students first come in, they're really scared of faculty. Like we're on this big, we're high up on this cliff and they're way down on the bottom. And what you really have to remind your students is we all came here to teach at a liberal arts college by choice. We want that interaction with students. We want students to come by and tell us, when they're struggling with the material in the class, when they found something really interesting, from another class that relates to our class, or when they just had, a really good lacrosse game or swim meet or whatever. We're happy to hear that stuff too. Like we're really here to interact with the students and support their education, across the curriculum, in the classroom and outside of the classroom. And that's something that I think a lot of students really is an adjustment for a lot of students, because they come in really scared of faculty because, we're big and imposing, I guess. I don't know, but we're here to interact with them.
So it looks like we have a question. You guys see it in the chat? It's something about getting into courses that are full. Anybody want to jump in?
Yes, so I can talk about this because I've been working. So students have been doing registration yesterday and today for their courses. And we have a very large student class this year, about 350-ish. Normally it's closer to 300, but because of the pandemic, a lot of students took a gap year. And so now we're looking at a fairly large size. And so classes are tight. We are adding more classes. We will be adding more classes more sections of things up until the start of the semester. In fact, I got a few panicked emails from my advisees today because they couldn't get into, they got 2 classes, but they're not sure what to do about the other 2. That is normal. that will work itself out by the time the semester starts. And your students also have, your students, our students also have opportunities to change classes, so they can go to the first day of class, and if they don't like it, they can drop it, and they can look for another class. And that there's sort of like this giant game of musical chairs that goes on in the first week or so of the semester, as students move from one class to another. In terms of what to do if the course that she really wants is full, send a perm. You can send an email as well. Some faculty may not be looking at either their perm list or their email list until the first week of the semester. They may not decide whether to over-enroll the course until that point. So we always get students who get anxious right around this time because they can't get into the classes they wanted. Those classes, most of those classes, if they're very popular, will still be there next semester. And it'll be a little bit easier to get into them because a bunch of students will have taken them this semester. It does work out. Like, as I said, we're going to be adding more sections of stuff. So there will be some more sections added of the popular classes, and students will find that there are other classes on the curriculum that maybe they didn't notice the first time they went through the portal that they're just as excited to take. The thing they should do is, if they're nervous, reach out to their advisor and their academic guide to get some advice and support.
Yeah, so I belong to one of the field groups, which classes are quite hard to get into. But so that's, say, media studies. We already teach larger intro classes. So our intro classes are usually like 20 to 25, which is a pretty big number. Not as big as science. You guys have the biggest, so yes. you get the crown, you get the award. But you know, we offer those intro classes every semester. And so one thing I noticed, which is quite interesting, was last year, because we were remote and because the orientation period got stretched out to about almost a month. And I don't know if that's the case again this year. Actually, I found that to be quite beneficial because my first year students, advisees, really were much calmer in terms of getting into courses because they had that whole month where pre-registration was open. No one was really upset about not getting into any courses in the end. So I thought that was actually a good change under the sort of remote system. So I would say maybe that's something to think about if we're not continuing it, you know, because now we're back on campus. The second thing I would say also emphasizes the shopping for classes. A lot of students don't understand that. The first 2 weeks are very fluid. And in fact, I encourage my advisees, first year advisees especially, to go to more than the classes they're registered for. So a lot of faculty, not all, but I would say most faculty probably would allow, especially now that we're back in person, for students who are not enrolled in the class to sit in on the first class, because there is a lot of add drop happening. So you might not end up with the same roster of students that you started with. That I would say is sort of the rule. But another thing to keep in mind is that I just got a notice for this year that there are probably going to be space limitations for the actual classrooms because of COVID. So I think we're trying to keep it, what I heard was like 20 students at the most for the rooms. I don't know if that's the case across all the campuses. And I think that's a good, you know, that's an additional factor because of, you know, that we're in a global pandemic right now. So that might be another factor. Another thing that I would advise also too is for the students, if they're really, you know, cannot get into, maybe not that first week, but like maybe by the end of that period, if they absolutely cannot get in. I mean, of course, there's also the following semester. If it's an intro-level class, it's most likely going to be offered again. And also students might not understand, and this is something that I do a lot in advising, which is that some fields have tiered classes. So they might have to take the interlevel class before they can take the advanced intermediate class, right? So that's also something to look for, are prerequisites. So they might need to have taken the prerequisite to get into the class. And there are also qualifying exams if they think they're qualified to take the more advanced classes. But I think, yeah, shop for classes, look at the prerequisites, also look ahead, right? Plan ahead. I would definitely say, like, for media studies, you want to plan ahead because our classes are very hard to get into. There are a lot of students. And then if it really doesn't work, then, tell the dean of your home college, because sometimes they have, some funds laying around and they might add a class if there's enough demand, add a session of classes therefore. So that's what I would say about the close, the difficulty in getting into classes.
Great. I wanted to see if we might answer some questions from the Q&A. One is actually, and I know it may be hard to answer, but how much reading and what kind of reading takes place in the course? And then just as a follow-up, there's a question about, should students sign up for 4 just to make sure they have 4 courses? So there's 2 there.
I can answer the second one real quick, which is yes, even if they haven't found their space in their first choice classes, if they have a second or third choice, they should sign up for that because they can always drop it if their perm gets accepted for a first choice. Go ahead, Darin.
Yeah, and I could kind of jump on the first one with it. My understanding is that it depends the amount of reading. In my FYS course, I had students read quite a bit. But it was a selection of different fiction books and news articles and journal articles. But we also watched movies and TV shows where they had to write responses to. So there was a whole bunch of different avenues of content for the students to engage with throughout the class. I know that some of my colleagues have taught FYS courses where they read a big stack of books, and others where they focus on one specific focus. So it does kind of vary, is my understanding, between the classes.
Yeah, it's really up to the professor how they want to structure our class. We have one class this year called In the News, where the students are just going to read the New York Times every day, and that's going to be that becomes the focus of what they're going to talk about in class.
Yeah, I agree with both. I mean, I think for my class, it's probably less than what I would assign for a non-FYS class. We're talking about maybe about 40 pages a week. And as Darin has mentioned, I don't assign one single book. It's sort of a collection of different, some of them are critical essays, some of them are interviews, some of them are, I do sort of mix it up a little. I do for FYS sort of mix it up a little bit more in terms of different, I also want to introduce students to different styles of writing or different source material that might draw from that pertains to my field. But definitely less than a non-FYS class because of the writing intensive element to it, because we spend a lot of time. I mean, that's another thing I think FYS is useful, is to teach students like revisions, rewrites, that you don't write your paper or whatever writing assignment the night before and just hand it in and that's that, right? So I think that's another really valuable thing for them to learn that would really help them in their undergraduate career at the Claremont colleges.
Great. I want to pose 2 new questions. One is, as you can see, Bridget wrote, would love to hear more about students, how they actually get selected for their FYS. And then as a second question, how the rotation works for, registering for classes, just how that functions.
Oh, okay, I can answer both of those. So the way that students get selected is they had to submit a form that listed their top 5 choices. We have 23 different sections of FYS this year. So they had to pick 5. And then the first priority for me was just trying to get everybody into one of their top 3 so they wouldn't be too unhappy with where they got assigned. And then I do look a little bit for balance. I try to make sure students are not, the only in their class, the only male student, the only first generation student. I try to balance things that way, but mostly it's just based on their preferences, because students get really unhappy if they don't get one of their preferred courses. It's kind of like you want them to start the semester on a good note, not a bummer note. The second question was registration times. So they do rotate. So if your student is registering this afternoon, which is the last group of registration times, they will probably get bumped to the first group when they go to register for spring semester courses. So the registrar will put them in groups and then rotates those groups throughout the year, but it's also by class year. So the seniors will be the first group to register for spring courses, and then the juniors, and then the first year students will be last.
Great. Okay, and then I'll go ahead and ask, knowing that there are forces beyond your control, is it the case that all classes are in person this term, including labs? That is, are there no online classes? Is that right? It seems the schedule seems to suggest some of those options. And then the second question I'll ask is about the course catalog, and that does it get updated at a certain point in time soon?
Oh, okay. I can answer both of those. So I know there are some chemistry labs that they decided to teach online just because they weren't, we didn't get information about whether we could teach in person or online until about a month ago from the county. So they needed to come up with a curriculum that they knew would work either way. So they went with an online for the labs. As far as I know, except for a few intro science labs, everything else is in person. Darin and Ming, I don't know if you've heard of any other courses that are online.
No, I haven't heard of any.
And
One thing I'll say is just personally, I don't know what other faculty are doing. I am actually planning to do a combination of both online and Zoom office hours, so that students have that option, because I do find that they appreciate that this is also because I don't live in Claremont, so there's a sort of additional flexibility for myself as well. So that's something, but like in terms of the actual teaching, my understanding it's all on campus.
yeah, it should be all on campus. There may be a few faculty who, for health reasons, are going to teach their classes online, but that's very rare. We've all been strongly encouraged to teach in person. The other question was why the course catalog does not match with what's actually offered. And that's because the course catalog serves a different role. So the portal lists the courses that are currently offered. The course catalog lists the courses that are offered in each program over the years. So there's some courses that are only offered every other year, and they'll be listed in the catalog so that students can know that they're available as they start to plan their majors, but they won't necessarily show up on the portal this particular semester. So it's important to realize that those are not meant to be exact matches, what's in the catalog and what's on the portal.
Great. And so I also want to ask about, generally speaking, what does success look like at the end of first year? And I just want to say too, we have some families here, I'm sure that their sophomores are coming to the campus for the first time. And if there are some words you could say about the sophomore year and your role in that period.
Darin or Ming, you want to jump in first?
Yeah, I could jump on that one. Since I have just experienced finishing first year with students, I think it changes again between different faculty teaching the FYS, but I think when you look at the academic goals, Pitzer makes it pretty clear. We have our normal credits that, just about every college has, math and science and reading and all that stuff. And then we have what I call our special Pitzer credits, which are social justice theory, courses that engage with multiculturalism, and a praxis class. And these are 4 specific credits that students have to complete in order to graduate on time. So at the end of my first year with the students, I like to just take a snapshot of which courses they had, which credits do they have. And I start there just to make it more business and be like, okay, these are the credits you have. But also what's really important, at least for my for my students, is to say, you know, did you take advantage of the liberal arts education? Did you try things? You know, you came into Pitzer saying, I'm going to go to med school, I'm going to be a doctor. Did you take that class that made you think, nah, I really, really, really like my poetry class. It was great. And, you know, engaging with the students and ask them questions, are you satisfied with the year? Last year was a little different, but that to me is the first two lines of success. What are your credits looking like, and are you satisfied? Did you try different things and wear different hats? Also, as I mentioned before, I then asked them, who did you meet this year? Does somebody know your name? That's not me. And so I guess those are my three things. And of course, there's, you know, looking at grades and plans for the next year. Have you thought about the next 2 years or 3 years? Things like that. So there's a lot of moving pieces, but a big component of success is, from my stance, is, do they feel like it was a success? Do my students feel?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with what Darren just mentioned. I would also just add that I think because we are in these unique circumstances currently, what might be important is because, you know, we essentially is going to have 2 years of students who've never been on campus, and they might know each other, but they might only know each other virtually through Zoom. So I think that, and I assume that that is already in the planning, is that, you know, maybe a bit more work would need to be done in terms of getting first and second year students acclimatized to being on campus, and also sort of like building that sense of community, but also being safe in doing so, right? Because we're still in the middle of a pandemic. So I think that's quite important to do. Yeah.
I can add to that. I think generally the difference between the first year and second year advising is first year is all about exploration, as Darren said. It's all about making sure that you really do like your science classes more than your poetry class if you want to be a science major, and that it's not the other way around. And it's, you know, I spent a lot of time in my meetings with students this week pushing them to find a course in an area they'd never heard of. Take a philosophy class, take an anthropology class. You probably didn't have those in high school. You don't know what they are. How do you know if you like them or not? When you get to the second year, by the end of the second year, they really should be done with that exploration phase and narrowing down on a major. They don't have to declare a major until the first semester of their junior year. But they need to start planning if they're thinking about, you know, study abroad. If they want to study abroad in the fall of their junior year, they may need to apply for that in the fall of their sophomore year. So it's more about moving from exploration to actually coming up with a plan for the next 3 years, and you know, what are their possible majors? Can they get those courses in they need for that major and study abroad? And how does study abroad relate to what they might major in, and those kinds of things. And I know this has been a weird 2 years for study abroad, but typically 70% of Pitzer students do go abroad. So it's sort of a part of the Pitzer culture to study abroad.
Yeah, and just one last point on that. The contract I have with my students is a living document. I meet with my advisees multiple times. I meet with them before they can register for classes. I meet with them in the middle of the semesters. I meet with them before a semester, usually one-on-one, but yesterday I actually had a big meet and greet again. I engage with them at many levels throughout the semester. And so minds get changed, you know, even halfway through a semester, even after they register for multiple classes, they say, yeah, no, there's another class that seems to kind of tickle me. And I go, yeah, like jump on that, like see where it goes. So success is sort of a moving target, I guess. But yeah, the first year exploration, and this year with my students, I am, as Sarah mentioned, really focusing, like, what spoke to you in this last year?
I think there might be another quick question we can answer, which is, how long will students be advised by first year seminar teachers? Which I believe, well, it's 2, but it could extend beyond that, right? So because typically, if a student decides a major or decides an area of focus by, let's say, the end of their second year, beginning of the third year, that they would find an academic advisor in that field. And if your first year seminar professor is not from that field, then they have the option of switching advisors. Or, the thing about Pitzer, which is great, is the flexibility, right? So you can keep your first year seminar professor as your advisor, but add an academic advisor from your field of major, right? So you can have more than one advisor. And that, again, sort of going back to Sarah's race car driving slide, that's really the student's the driver. Mm-hmm. And I would also say that, even with major declarations, there are quite a number of options, right? There's double major, there's combined major. Students have the option of combining 2 existing fields into their own major, or even in some cases, creating their own special major, which typically means combining more than 2 fields, existing fields within the Pitzer and Claremont College curriculum.
Right. So I will add to that. We intend that students keep their first year advisor until they declare a major. Some students will switch advisors in their second semester, and that's fine. Like we said, the students in the driver's seat. So some students will keep their first year advisor and just add on a major advisor because they have such a great relationship with that first year advisor. They want to keep interacting with them for all 4 years. But not every student and every faculty member are a perfect match. So it's also okay to switch after a semester or sometime in your sophomore year. I mean, and it's also okay to add, right? So if your student has a class with somebody, like, so they have 4 classes, they have 4 professors they're interacting with. If one of those other professors they really click with, it's fine to go to them informally for advice. It's fine to add them as a second advisor. It's fine to swap them out with their FYS advisor. As Ming said, the students in the driver's seat here. There was a question about faculty going on sabbatical next semester, and this is an unusual year because we have so many students coming to campus. Usually we don't recruit faculty to teach in FYS if they're going to be on sabbatical in the spring. We had to recruit several this year, but the ones who volunteered are the ones who are willing to keep meeting with their students over Zoom and keep doing the advising even though they are on sabbatical. That actually speaks to the dedication that our faculty have to working with students, because they're going to devote some of that sabbatical time, when usually they're just happy to be away from campus, to making sure that the students have that support to get through their first year.
Okay, so I want to warn we're close on our time, and I do see a message in the question and answer about, students coming to campus after a long while and some of the stressors. And I would just say our next session at 10:30 with Assistant Professor of Psychology Marcus Rodriguez and Fiona Vike from the Montsor Counseling Center will really be discussing that in detail. So I hope that you can join us at 10:30 for that, because we are aware, and really want to be a support about this transition and the uniqueness of it. So I want to go ahead. I think give the panel, would you like to say anything else before our time ends? I've already did my plug for a 10:30 time, so we have a couple minutes more.
We're just all really excited to meet your students and be back on campus this year. That's how I'll end it, I think.
Agreed. maybe do one final question? Oh, there's some.
Was there anything we didn't answer that was in the?
That's, I'm looking through the list to see. There's a question about like how registration works. Should we try to answer that? It's actually pre-registration, but it's not really registration.
We don't have a registration. We only have a pre-registration. I've never understood that.
So it is true, first year students are the fall semester of your first year, you know, you're at your most disadvantaged because all the returning students have pre-registered in April and May of that same year. You know, but I tell my advisees it can only get better, right? Because as they become more, if they become even second semester first year students are at a more advantaged position because they get to register with everyone. They just go last, right? So it's by seniority, I believe. But the difference is really like a day after that first semester. I personally don't like the current system, but it's beyond my power to change that. You know. So anybody want to add anything about pre-registration?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll reiterate the things we said before, which is that registration goes on until the end of the second week of the semester. So if students are not happy with what the courses they found today and yesterday, there's opportunities to switch things around. And because some students don't realize they're not happy until they went to the first day of class. There is actually a lot of switching that happens in that first week. So I know it's like really stressful for students who are registering at the end of today, or who the course they really wanted already filled up, but just kind of, you know, take some deep breaths and be patient, and you will eventually get into those courses, if not this semester, then next semester.
Well, thank you so much. This was really a lot of great information, and I'm sure very helpful for families to get to meet all three of you and actually hear so much good information and reassurance, which is always very nice. So thank you again. We really appreciate it. And we thank you to the audience for coming this morning, and please come at 10:30, and we'll see you on campus soon. Okay, thanks. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.